Hello and welcome to another episode of A Brief History. Today's episode, Phineas and Ferb. Ready, set, go! Los Angeles, California, the early 1990s. At a time when cartoons were mainly viewed as kid stuff that only existed to sell toys, the world of televised animation was in the process of being completely revolutionized by Matt Groening's adult animated sitcom, The Simpsons. But all of that is a story for another time. Our story actually begins in the character layout department of The Simpsons production team, where a certain pair of animators by the name of Dan Povenmire and Jeff Swampy Marsh were starting to become good friends. Maybe even more than friends.
Best friends.
But while working on a revolutionary cartoon with your new best friend is a pretty dope setup, it wasn't exactly that easy. You see, The Simpsons production schedule was a little bit wonky, with artists being laid off and rehired every few months. Meaning that at the end of a production cycle, Povenmire and Marsh would have to find other jobs to keep the lights on during the downtime. And so, the two applied for jobs at Nickelodeon and were accepted to work on one of the network's earliest original cartoons, Rocko's Modern Life.
Hey, wait a minute. Aren't you kind of oversimplifying things?
Yes, I am.
Alright, carry on.
While at Nickelodeon, Povenmire and Marsh were able to work more closely with each other as a writing team. The two began to form their own signature style and expand their creativity. So much so that they even began to develop their own concept for an original cartoon around 1993 based on their childhood summer vacations. But the idea didn't really start to come together until one day when Povenmire was doodling while out for dinner. He sketched a kid character with a big Dorito-shaped head, and that instantly sparked his imagination. He brought this character concept to Marsh, and from there, ideas for their new show began to flourish. Suddenly, a general idea about making the most of summer vacation was now far more fleshed out, focusing on two stepbrothers, Phineas and Ferb, who spend each day of their summer vacation doing impossible things like building massive citywide roller coasters. Plus, there were now secret agents, evil scientists, A-plots, B-plots, intersecting plots, and yeah, these guys had a lot of ideas for their show. So, with the concept and characters on lock, Povenmire and Marsh were ready to start pitching Phineas and Ferb. But unfortunately, while various networks did take to the idea, they would ultimately reject the pitch, citing the show as being too complicated. But Povenmire and Marsh still had a ton of faith in their show. They weren't just gonna toss out their concept after a couple of rejections, but they did still need to make a living, so with Phineas and Ferb struggling to get off the ground, Povenmire and Marsh continued working on Rocko's Modern Life until the series ended in 1996. And after that, the two kinda went their separate ways for a while. Marsh moved to London, where he helped produce movies, as well as cartoons like Postman Pat and Bounty Hamster. Meanwhile, Povenmire stayed in the US, working on the likes of Hey Arnold, Cat Dog, SpongeBob, and even Family Guy. But even with Marsh off working in a completely different country, Povenmire continued pushing for their passion project, with Phineas and Ferb still being his go-to idea when he had the opportunity to pitch a series. He pitched the show to all sorts of networks for more than a decade, and it always came out the same. The executives loved the idea, but it's just too complicated to greenlight. That is, until Povenmire was able to pitch the show to Disney Channel, and okay, yeah, they turned it down too. But then they were like, psych! And around 2005, they reached out to Povenmire saying that they actually were interested in Phineas and Ferb and wanted him to put together a pilot. Freaking finally! Only took like 12 years. But of course, Povenmire was not gonna do this alone. So he called up Jeff Swampy Marsh all the way in England and asked if he wanted to help produce Phineas and Ferb's pilot. He said yes, and thus, early production on Phineas and Ferb finally began. But rather than sending in a normal pitch script or making a fully animated pilot, Povenmire and Marsh chose, instead, to put together an animatic using their storyboards and Povenmire's expert voice acting.
Phineas Ferb, I'm gonna go pick up a few things. You boys stay out of trouble, okay?
And sent this in as their pitch. This animatic followed Phineas and Ferb as they attempted to build a roller coaster in their backyard while their sister Candace tries to bust her brother. others. All the while, the family pet platypus Perry sneaks off to fight an evil scientist named Dr. Heinz Mettelschmerz in the episode's B-plot. Somewhere in the chaos, the Perry and Phineas and Ferb plots intersect, and all traces of Phineas and Ferb's roller coaster are erased just before Candace gets home with their mom. And yes, I said Mettelschmerz, that's actually what he's called in the pilot. So yeah, that was Povenmire and Marsh's Phineas and Ferb pilot, and it worked. Their pitch showed enough promise that Disney Channel greenlit Phineas and Ferb for a full 26-episode season. Fast forward to August 17th, 2007, and 14 years since the show's conception, a fully produced version of Povenmire and Marsh's pilot was officially premiered on Disney Channel. This was the first time Phineas and Ferb was ever aired on TV, acting as a preview for the full season, which would premiere later. And wow, did this preview go over well, gaining more than 10 million views in ratings. And needless to say, hype for the season premiere must have been through the roof, for when the season finally launched on February 1st, 2008, it was basically an instant hit. Pretty much every episode of Phineas and Ferb followed the exact same format that I described earlier. Phineas and Ferb start on a big project, Candace tries to bust them, Perry fights Mettelschmerz, now renamed Doofenshmirtz.
Oh, there you are, Perry.
Team Rocket blasts off again, roll credits, bop! Phineas and Ferb stuck to a very strict formula with each episode, and yet still managed to find ways to play with its formula and keep things fresh. One of the show's more notable aspects was its music. During production of season 1, Povenmire and Marsh had written a couple of songs for various episodes. And the higher-ups at Disney loved these songs so much that they requested every episode of the show from that point on have a song in it. Which is a pretty tall order, but Povenmire and Marsh had quite a bit of experience with writing music for cartoons under their belt, having coined the musical episode of Rocko's Modern Life Zanzibar, and heck, Dan Povenmire wrote the freaking Campfire Song from SpongeBob. So when it came to music, Phineas and Ferb were in good hands. And not only were they able to manage a song per episode, but the songs were so good that they actually became one of the show's biggest selling points. So, like I said, the first season of Phineas and Ferb went over incredibly well, with Disney renewing the show for a second season only a few months after the show premiered. And for this second season, Disney brought Phineas and Ferb over to their new network, Disney XD, in addition to continuing to run it on the main Disney Channel. In fact, Phineas and Ferb was the first show to ever be broadcast on Disney XD back in 2009. And all of this was just the beginning. Between its unique, fast-paced style, charming characters, great music, and humor enjoyable for any age, Phineas and Ferb easily became the newest Disney Channel phenomenon. Being renewed for third and fourth seasons, seeing a TV movie in 2011, plus video games, books, weird talk show spin-offs, and a live show tour that just... oh no. But of course, all good things must come to an end. And come May of 2015, Disney announced that after a 7-year-long run, Phineas and Ferb would be coming to an end later that year. But Disney was not gonna let their longest-running TV series go out without a bang, leading up to the series finale with a freaking 73-hour marathon on Disney XD. All of which culminated with an hour-long finale simulcast on both Disney Channel and Disney XD on June 12th, 2015. And just like that, Phineas and Ferb was over. Except for another hour-long special that aired that November, but aside from that, Phineas and Ferb was over. But just because Phineas and Ferb's unusually long summer had come to an end doesn't mean that Dan Povenmire and Jeff Swampy Marsh were packing things in too. On the contrary, they hit the ground running once again with their new Disney XD series Milo Murphy's Law, which premiered in October of 2016 and has already been renewed for a second season in 2018. So these guys clearly aren't going away anytime soon. Plus, there's apparently gonna be a Milo and Phineas and Ferb crossover at some point, so that's pretty cool. Phineas and Ferb was such an outlier and really kind of a risk for Disney Channel back in the day. Like, the show was legitimately pretty ambitious and came around during a time when Disney really wasn't prioritizing animated shows. But the series prospered entirely thanks to the creators' sheer passion and perseverance. It took Povenmire and Marsh over a decade to even be given the chance to pursue their their idea. And now, just over 10 years since the show's premiere, Phineas and Ferb is still going strong with an active fan base, regular reruns, and more. Much like Phineas and Ferb in the show, Dan Povenmire and Jeff Swampy Marsh had a big idea that many thought was too complicated to pull off. And not only did they do it, but they somehow made something even bigger and crazier than anyone expected. And whether you're building a roller coaster in your backyard or bringing your decade-old cartoon idea to life, the story of Phineas and Ferb stands as proof that no project is ever too big. Thanks for watching, guys. DFTBA. Hey guys, thank you so much for watching my Phineas and Ferb video. I really hope you liked it. If you'd like to see some more brief history, then you can click right here to see my last episode all about Bill Wirtz. Or if you like Phineas and Ferb, then you may enjoy this episode all about Gravity Falls. Also, be sure to subscribe to my channel and hit that bell icon to make sure you don't miss any future episodes of A Brief History. And I think that's about it, so I'll say it again, guys. Thanks for watching, and DFTBA.